What's up, folks? This is Tony Brewer. You're listening to or watching, as the case may be, Cogitations. Cogitations is the podcast where we think about things, we contemplate them, we turn them over in our minds, and then we discuss them. Daniel chapter 7, verse 28, Daniel writes, "Hitherto is the end of the matter. As for me, Daniel, my cogitations much troubled me, my countenance changed in me, but I kept the matter in my heart." And we're not going to keep the matter in our heart. We're going to talk about it. And today we're going to talk about, well, antisemitism, hate speech, all that good stuff. This is something that, quite frankly, my brethren, we need to pay attention to, because this, to be quite honest with you, is detrimental to the Lord's work. Free speech, the First Amendment. Well, first off, just so I don't misread it or don't misquote it, the First Amendment to the Constitution. All right, here it is. Here's the whitehouse.gov. The First Amendment provides that Congress make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibition of free exercise. It protects freedom of speech, the press, assembly, and the right to petition the government for redress of grievances. I want to see what it says. What does the First Amendment say? All right, right here. There's a transcription. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people to peaceably assemble and to petition the government for redress of grievances. Folks, this bill that was just passed, now it has not gone through Congress. It was passed in the House. And if you're not familiar with how we make our laws, it's gotta be passed by Congress or by the House. It goes to Congress, and then the president has to sign off on it, and the president can veto it even if it's passed by both the House and the Congress. Diana Harden, thank you so much. I appreciate you for that good comment. Now, why is it that free speech is so important? I want you to think about this. We're going to go all the way back to Isaiah. And you might be thinking, Tony, what in the world does Isaiah have to do with free speech in the United States? Folks, this ain't about the United States. This is about the world in general. As Christians, we need to be champions of God given rights. God has given his people rights. They come from God. Free speech comes from God. If you don't believe me, let's go. Isaiah chapter 1, verse 18. All right. "Come now and let us reason together, saith the Lord. Though your sins be as scarlet, they shall be as white as snow. Though they be red like crimson, they shall be as wool. If ye be willing and obedient, ye shall eat the good of the land. But if ye refuse and rebel, ye shall be devoured with the sword. For the mouth of the Lord has spoken it." Folks, free speech is enshrined in this verse. You may not notice. How can we reason together, saith the Lord, if we are not able to express things with our voice that are contrary to the cosmic law, the law of the cosmos? In other words, God gives us the unalienable right to speak wrongly in order to be able to reason. I don't know. I don't know any other way to say that. Hey, Alabama says most don't realize that the First Amendment protects the rest of the amendments. Words, definitions, and meanings matter. Yes. We have got to be able to speak and speak freely. If you are unable to speak, you are not free. I'm not going to mitigate that. You cannot live in a truly free society if you are censored. Now, what about quote unquote hate speech? Freedom of speech specifically deals with hate speech. People have the right to express hatred just like they have the right to express love, and it's given by God. Now, God's design is, well, if one group of people says, I hate this other group of people, the other group of people is now allowed to say, well, you shouldn't hate us. Here's why. And now you are reasoning together. It could be that one group of people hates another group of people and it's justified. I'm not talking about hate as in the biblical sense of the term, but I'm just talking about hate as in those people are others and we don't want to associate with them and we don't want to integrate with them. Like we want to keep separate from them. Those people are not like us. They're not as good as us. They are less than, all of that good stuff. And it may be because that group of people is full of criminals and terrorists and what have you. Well, so now you can come together on the public stage and you can, both sides can reason. And you got that right. Hate speech. And I'm using the term hate speech accommodatively because, as Hey Alabama put in the comment section, hate speech does not exist because not everyone has the same definition of hate. I broached this subject when we were in Toronto, and I was trying to give the congregation there some encouragement. And I said, in order for me to give you encouragement, you got to be real with where you are. And you do not have freedom of speech here. And one person in the congregation took exception to that and said, no, we have freedom of speech in Canada. I said, no, you do not. I said, go to the Canadian government website and search up their hate speech laws. And you will see that Christians cannot freely speak about their religion. And incidentally, let me do a quick Google search here. Let's see. Bear with me. So here's what I said. I challenged the people of the congregation. I said, if you think that you have, as a Canadian citizen living in Toronto in Canada, if you think you have free speech and that the government will protect you by when you preach the gospel, I want you to go preach a sermon from 1 Corinthians chapter 6 and go to church in Wellesley in Toronto. Church in Wellesley is a neighborhood in Toronto known as the Village. This enclave for Toronto's gay community has bustling cafes, eateries, and bars. It's known for its week-long offbeat Halloween celebrations and buzzy club scene. Every June, the neighborhood celebrates Toronto Pride Month with concerts, parties, and parades. So my suggestion is, if you feel like you've got free speech and the government will protect your free speech, then go down there and get you a milk crate, stand up, and just start reading from 1 Corinthians chapter 6. And by the time you get to that laundry list of sins that will keep those people out of heaven, but such were some of them, now they've changed, you will probably be physically accosted. And when the police show up, even if you're battered and beaten and bruised, they're going to take you to jail because you don't have a right to speak offensively. 99% of colleges do not have any pro-Hamas demonstrations. That's a good point. Yeah, this is terribly reactionary, and it is a rip in the fabric of our government in the United States of America. This is really bad. Good morning, John Exum. It's good to see you. Let me give some comments here. We must protect the rights of the people regardless of what they say, because the same laws designed to punish someone will be turned around and used against us. Absolutely. That's the thing. Right now, they are trying to codify hate speech, antisemitism. Do you understand what's included in that? Do you understand that if this is codified into law, that but one of the definitions of hate speech, let me see if I can find this. How does Israel define anti? All right. This is the Holocaust. This is the HolocaustRemembrance.com Hold on. I wanted to get I wanted to get something from the Israeli government. Oh well. Let's see if this gets it. Um, what is anti-Semitism? This is HolocaustRemembrance.com. Let's see if we can find a see what they consider hate. Let's see what they consider anti-Semitism is. All right. In the spirit of the Stockholm Declaration that states, with humanity still scarred by anti-Semitism and xenophobia, the international community shares a solemn responsibility to fight those evils. The Committee on Anti-Semitism and Holocaust Denial, called the IHRA plenary in Budapest 2015 to adopt the following working definition of anti-Semitism. Now, here's the problem with the bill that was just passed in the House. There is no definition of anti-Semitism. They are relying on this working definition. You need to call your Congress wherever you are and tell them they need to shut this down. It needs to die on the Congress floor. On May 2016, the plenary in Bucharest decided to adopt the following, this is non-legally binding, working definition of anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism is a certain perception of Jews which may be expressed as hatred toward Jews. Rhetorical and physical manifestations of anti-Semitism are directed toward Jewish or non-Jewish individuals and or their property, towards Jewish community institutions and religious faculties or facilities. So, toward Jewish community institutions and religious facilities. Now, keep that in mind. Now, manifestations might include. So now they're going to expand on this and they're going to tell you exactly what they mean. You don't have to guess. They're telling you out loud what they mean. You need to listen to them. All right? Manifestations might include targeting of the state of Israel, conceived as a Jewish collectively. However, criticism of Israel similar to that leveled against any other country cannot be regarded as anti-Semitic. Anti-Semitism frequently charged Jews with conspiring to harm humanity, and it is often used to blame Jews for why things go wrong. It is expressed in speech, writing, visual forms, and action, and employs sinister stereotypes and negative character traits. Contemporary examples of anti-Semitism in public life, the media, schools, the workplace, and in the religious sphere could, taking into account the overall context, include but are not limited to. Now, this bill that was passed has to rely on this working definition because there is not a concrete codified definition of anti-Semitism in the bill. It's nebulous. It's like the word hate speech, what Hey Alabama said. It doesn't exist. Calling for, aiding, or justifying the killing or harming of Jews in the name of radical ideology or an extremist view of religion. Okay, I don't think anybody listening to me is going to ever do that. But let's keep going. Because there are 11 things that would be anti-Semitic, but they're not limited to these 11 things. Making mendacious, dehumanizing, demonizing, or stereotypical allegations about Jews as such, or the power of Jews as a collective, such as, especially, but not exclusively, the myth about the world Jewish conspiracy or of the Jews controlling the media, economy, government, or other societal institutions. So, if this bill is codified into law, and I get on the podcast and I say, now I don't believe this. This is a for instance, but if I say, well, even if I did say this, I would stand by this. It appears that there is controlling the media, controlling Hollywood, controlling our entertainment, that there is Jewish people at the tops of all of this. And while they might not be some kind of nefarious cabal that are conspiring with one another, their motives are aligned, therefore they don't have to conspire with one another. Well, do you understand that meets this criteria of anti-Semitism? Therefore, what I just said, if this bill passes into law, will be illegal. It will be a crime. Now, you may say, well, Tony, what you said is stupid. I mean, yeah, we can talk about the validity of it, but there's no way to reason together. Because if I say, well, you know, all of entertainment and the news is controlled by the Jewish people, don't you? And then you would say, well, no, Tony, that's not true. Let me tell you why. Well, we can't even reason together if this law is if this bill becomes a law. Let's keep going. Accusing Jews as a people for being responsible for real or imagined wrongdoing committed by a single Jewish group or person, or even for acts committed by non-Jews. Okay? Denying the fact, scope, mechanism, or intentionality of the genocide of the Jewish people at the hands of the National Socialist Germany and its supporters and accomplices during World War II, the Holocaust. In other words, denying the Holocaust is anti-Semitic. Accusing the Jews as a people or Israel as a state of inventing or exaggerating the Holocaust. Accusing Jewish citizens of being more loyal to Israel or to the alleged priorities of Jews worldwide than to the interest of their own nations. Let me tell you something. I listen to Ben Shapiro a lot, and I think at this point he's more loyal to Israel than he is to the United States of America. And I think that I can make a pretty good case about that. I'm not allowed to do that if this bill passes into law. I'd go to jail. All right. Denying the Jewish people their right to self-determination by claiming that the existence of the state of Israel is a racist endeavor. Applying double standards of requiring of it a behavior not expected or demanded of any other democratic nation. So applying a double standard to the nation of Israel. All right, so we're going to apply a double standard to the nation of Israel. Are we applying a double standard to the nation of Israel? I mean, some people on the left are. They're saying that if the nation of Israel is attacked, they don't have a right to defend. But again, just simply stating that and trying to have a conversation about Israel's response to the October 7th attack from Hamas, we can no longer even talk about it. We would be in violation of the law. Using symbols and images associated with classic antisemitism. Now listen, folks, I want you to lean in and listen to this. Using symbols and images associated with classic antisemitism. For example, claims of Jews killing Jesus. The Jews killed Jesus, folks. The Jews killed Jesus. It was the Jews that killed Jesus. This same Jesus that you crucified is both Lord and Christ. Who was he talking to? The Jews. Do you think Peter was wrong? Do you think? I bet you, real quick, that I can do this number. All right. Matthew 27:25. His blood be on us and our children. We remember whenever Pilate comes out and says, I find no fault in him. He's innocent. And the Jewish people said, his blood be upon us and our children. Therefore, let all the house of Israel know assuredly that God hath made this same Jesus, I referenced this earlier, whom ye have crucified, both Lord and Christ. Acts 2:36. Again, do you think Peter was wrong? 1 Thessalonians 2:14 and 15, Paul writes about the Jews who both killed the Lord Jesus and their own prophets, and have persecuted us as they please not God and are contrary to all men. Folks, do you understand that if this bill is passed into law, what I just read will be illegal? I don't know. Am I overreacting to this? I don't think I am. I think if you're in the United States of America, you need to start making phone calls and sending letters. Using symbols and images associated with classic anti-Semitism, and then claims of the Jews killing Jesus. Do you understand that that would mean that a cross would be a sign, a symbol of classic anti-Semitism? And then holding the Jews collectively responsible for the actions of the state of Israel. I remember when the Passion of the Christ movie came out and there was a fear of a rise in anti-Semitism. I remember that too, Scott. So incidentally, that movie, the The Passion of the Christ, it would be illegal. That would become contraband. Anti-Semitic acts are criminal when they are defined by law. For example, denial of the Holocaust or distribution of anti-Semitic materials in some countries. Now, listen, if it is the case that this goes to law and this becomes a law, this book becomes outlawed. This book becomes contraband. Well, why? Because it is anti-Semitic material, according to number 9. Using the symbol and images associated with classic anti-Semitism to characterize Israel or Israelis, and that includes claims of the Jews killing Jesus. This book claims beyond a shadow of a doubt that the Jews were responsible for killing Jesus. We're opening up a dreadful can of worms. We're setting a terrible precedent in the United States with this. Please call your representatives, call your Congress, do whatever you can, send letters. The words of Christ are a danger to the modern left. They will do anything to keep them from spreading. All we know is what's being told by the media. That's absolutely right. And that followed this comment. Israel is now being blamed for killing women and children in their attacks, and people are siding with Hamas. We aren't there and don't know what's actually happening there. Yes. Now, and all we know is what's going on in the media. I will tell you this. What happens is Hamas attacks Israel. Israel retaliates. And here's what happens. Israel picks out a target. And before they destroy that target, they drop flyers and notifications and send out mass warnings and all this, that, whatever they can. Well, they wouldn't drop flyers. I'm thinking about World War II. I believe that they're sending out mass notifications like through text and broadcast and stuff that says, look, we're going to bomb this place, this area of the city. Leave the city. If you don't want to be bombed, you got to leave this part of the city. Now, could you imagine if Israel sent paratroopers into Gaza and killed a bunch of women and children at a nightclub? Do you think Hamas, whenever they retaliated, do you think that they would send word in advance to say, if you don't want to be destroyed, if you don't want to be killed in this bombing or whatever, you need to leave this part of the city? I did not actually intend to spend this much time on this out of this segment. I really want to talk about the utility of free speech and why it's important to Christians. And, well, I mean, I think really we're seeing it. Anyway, I'm going to read the next two because I forgot to read them. Drawing comparisons of contemporary Israeli policy to that of the Nazis. So you can't compare the Jews to the Nazis. Now, you can compare white people to Nazis. You can compare the United States government to the Nazis. You can compare China to the Nazis. You can compare North Korea to the Nazis. But if this bill goes to law, we will be holding a double standard for the nation of Israel. They will be protected, and they will be above scrutiny. In order to scrutinize them, you will go to jail. Holding Jews collectively responsible for the actions of the state of Israel. I did read that. Anyway, I don't know what to do. That's it. They do send out notifications. Hamas is taking up residence in hospitals and schools, hiding behind women and children because they're cowards. Yes. And incidentally, that is why, to highlight this comment, Israel is now being blamed for killing women and children. You know, there are women and children being killed by Israel. It's war. There is always collateral damage because of the fog of war. Now, the question is, how much is each side trying to mitigate it? Israel is very much trying to mitigate it. Hamas is trying to maximize it. I will tell you this, I'm not in charge, I'm not God, and I'm glad. Because if I were, I would see what temperature sand turns to glass, and I would make the entirety of that segment of the world, I'd make it glass. Aren't you glad I'm not in charge? Aren't you glad that God has given us certain unalienable rights, and that if I'm going to function as a godly person, I've got to acknowledge and respect those rights. So therefore, I need to sit down on the public scene and I have to reason with the opposition, and I have to let the opposition say things that are terribly offensive to my ears, and my opposition has to allow me to say things that are terribly offensive to their ears, and then we scrutinize it, we twist it and turn it and break it down and build it up, and hopefully after that conversation we have something totally different that we both believe because we've left bad ideas. Anyway, that's supposed to be how it works. All right. Oops, wrong deal here. Let me go over here to this this NPR. All right. The House passes a bill aimed to combat antisemitism amid college unrest. This is from NPR. NPR is not a friend of conservatives, okay? The House Representatives passed a bill on Wednesday aimed at addressing reports of rising antisemitism on college campuses where activists angered by Israel's war against Hamas have been protesting for months and more recently set up encampments on campus grounds. The Anti-Semitism Awareness Act would see the adoption of the Internal Holocaust Remembrance Alliance's definition of anti-Semitism for the enforcement of federal anti-discrimination laws regarding education programs. We just read that, and one of the Holocaust Remembrance Alliance definition is, if you say that Jesus was killed by the Jews, then you're an anti-Semite. The bill passed with a 320 to 91 vote. 70 Democrats and 21 Republicans voted against the measure. I don't know how, but we need to reward the 21 Republicans and the 70 Democrats and 21 Republicans that voted against this. And the ones that passed it, we need to try our best to primary them. We need to try to do something, get them out, vote them cowards, them feckless cowards out of the office. And I don't care who it is. If you voted for this, you are not a patriot. You're a tyrant. Or at least you think that the tyrants are going to treat you well. Maybe you think they'll kill you last if you acquiesce. The international group defines anti-Semitism as a certain perception of Jews which may be expressed as hatred toward Jews, and gives examples of the definition's application, which include accusing the Jews as a people of being responsible for real or imagined wrongdoing committed by a single Jewish person or group, and making dehumanizing, demonizing, or stereotypical applications about Jews, such as the power of Jews as a collective. Representative Mike Lawler, a Republican of New York, introduced the legislation. Great. For all of those you listening in New York, vote him out. Right now, without a clear definition of anti-Semitism, the Department of Education and college administrators are having trouble discerning whether conduct is anti-Semitic or not, whether the activity we're seeing crosses the line into anti-Semitic harassment, he said on the House floor before passage. The bill goes further than an executive order from President Donald Trump signed in 2019. Opponents argue the measure could restrict free speech. It's how could it not? The the definition adopted by the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance includes contemporary examples of anti-Semitism, said Representative Jerry Nadler in a speech in the House floor ahead of the vote. The problem is that these examples may include protected speech in some contexts, particularly with respect to criticism of the state of Israel. Fellow New York Democrat Representative Richie Torres, one of the 15 Democratic co-sponsors of the bill, told NPR he finds the argument unconvincing. Vote him out. There's a false narrative that the definition censors criticism of the Israeli government. I consider it complete nonsense. Here's the thing. I don't know that the bill censors criticism of the Israeli government. I'm not a lawyer, and I'd have to dig down in that. That's nuanced. But I tell you what's not nuanced. The definition, as it reads, says that me teaching what the Bible teaches about the death of Jesus and who was responsible for it is illegal if it goes into law. If you can figure out how to critique the policies and practices of the Israeli government without calling for the destruction of Israel itself, then no reasonable person would ever accuse you of anti-Semitism. He added, here's the problem. Most people aren't reasonable. You function with this delusion that most people are reasonable. Here's something. Did you know that there is one demographic in the United States, less than 13% of the population of the United States commits over 50% of the violent crime? Is that a racist? It's the black community. It's black males, African Americans as they're called. Now I can say that because even though some people don't like it, and you might say, well, no reasonable person would say you're racist for saying that, Tony. That's just statistics that you can find on the FBI website. The problem is unreasonable people who are in power, they claim that if you say that, you're racist. Unreasonable people in power. Who put it in the comment section about free speech and the importance of it? And if you pass a law that censors speech, it's going to be used against you later. Oh well, one of y'all said that, and it's a good comment. I remember reading it, but that's the thing. You might be thinking, well, yeah, we need to pass this because, yeah, anti-Semitism is bad. Folks, what do you think after this little dust up between Palestine or Hamas and Israel? What do you think is going to happen when it dies down? What's the left going to do with this if it's passed into law? Remember, this Bible is an anti-Semitic piece of propaganda, according to the definition of the Holocaust place. I can't remember the acronym now, but and the definition that the bill uses is their definition. I don't know. Issues should transcend partisan politics. Oh, here we go. While members of both parties have criticized reports of anti-Semitism at the protest, Republicans have made the issue a central political focus. House Speaker Mike Johnson made a rare visit last week to Columbia University, where demonstrators were demanding the school divest from companies that operate in Israel. Johnson and a handful of GOP lawmakers met with a group of Jewish students. They are really concerned that their voices are not being heard when they may complain about being assaulted, being spit on, being told that all Jews should die. And they are not getting any response from the individuals who are literally being paid to protect them. Representative Anthony Esposito, Republican New York, told NPR on the meeting. Here's the thing. There doesn't have to be another law passed in order to fix this. It's already illegal to make death threats. It's already illegal to physically harass, to spit, to hit, to throw things, to have things thrown at you. It's already illegal. Just arrest the people that are already breaking the law and convict them under the laws we currently have. On Tuesday, Johnson held a press conference focused on antisemitism with a group of House Republicans at the U.S. Capitol. Antisemitism is a virus, and it will spread if it's not stamped out. Folks, it's stamped out. Nobody wants to be anti-Semitic. The nation is not defined by antisemitism. And that's just like there's racism toward people with a high concentration of melanin in their skin. There are pockets of individuals who are evil, backward, uninformed, that think less of people who have more melanin in their skin than they, but that is not the tone and tenor of the nation. Same way with anti-Semitism. If you can't just say, well, anti-Semitism, no, you've got to tell me, show me where these actions are taking place, and we have them. I mean, they're happening. So let's use the laws that are already in place to fix it. That's like if something happens where that's so terrible. A crime against a person with a high concentration of melanin in their skin, and it is absolutely beyond a shadow of a doubt like this was a racist situation. Let's drop the hammer. Let's put these people under the jail so they'll never see the light of day. I get it. But we don't have to have any new laws for that. We already have laws on the books that takes care of it. Tony, in most cases, would text and tweets, Facebook posts, etc., be considered speech and therefore subject to censor? Yes, absolutely. In fact, that is why Facebook enjoys, I think it's, I can't remember what ordinance or what, I can't remember what it's called now. But basically, the law is that Facebook acts as a publisher, or excuse me, man, I was well versed on this years ago, and I've forgotten. Facebook is not a publisher. Facebook is like your telephone company, like AT&T or Verizon. What's that called? It's not a utility. Facebook is a utility according to the law. So if you get on there and you call for violence and stuff like that, nobody can sue Facebook because Title 9? No, that's not it. Anyway, so like for instance, if I write a letter calling for actual violence and the Main Street newspaper in any town USA prints it and runs it, and then somebody goes out and commits violence, they can be sued and I can be sued because the newspaper has editorial discretion. They're not a utility. Facebook, X, Twitter, Instagram, all of the social media platforms, they are not publishers. They do not have editorial discretion. They're treated as a utility. Now, the problem is they enjoy editorial discretion because they censor, but they still enjoy the protections of a utility. That's the issue with that. But that's what come up years ago is your tweets, your posts and stuff like that, they are protected free speech. And the only thing that a platform has to do as far as censor is they can censure you if you actually violate the law. Which the only way you can violate the law on a text or a like for Twitter or something like that, a Facebook post, is you can do calls to violence, or you can show things that are illegal to show, like child stuff and whatnot. You got me? Um, I know that sounded really professional, but it makes me nervous to talk about it even. Um, but the point is, yes. So if you make a post, if you share a post, if this goes into law, if you copy and paste from the Bible any of the verses that I read, that's illegal. That is hate speech. War has to be made so terrible that people don't want to do that again, ending the war quickly. What? Yes. Incidentally, that's why we dropped the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. You know, we had more bombs to drop. We tried our best to get Japan to surrender. They said no. So the only thing, and they were killing people, man. There were innocent people. There were people, military on both sides, and there was just death everywhere. And the most expedient, most moral thing to do is we gave them one more chance to surrender. They said no. We dropped one bomb, and they still said no. And we dropped another one. And explained to them how many we had left. Like, you really messed up. You mucked about with our boats, and we don't like you messing with our boats. And we have more of these big bombs. How many do you want us to drop? We're going to keep dropping them till you surrender. Because even with the death toll that those two bombs caused, that was nothing compared to what a ground invasion of Japan would have caused. That was nothing compared to what a continued war effort would cause. And let me tell you, don't let any of these crack jobs that hate America tell you different. It was America that ended the war. It was the United States of America. The war would not have ended. Russia can't take credit for ending World War II. The United States of America can. And it was nasty and terrible. But what we did was so terrible that I think anybody in the world would think twice before launching a military attack like that again. It would take a crazy, religious, radical working independently to hijack planes before we ever saw a death toll like that again on American soil. Because that's what you have to do. 2,403 souls perished in Pearl Harbor alone. Sakes alive. That's it. Folks, I'm not gonna read the rest of this article. I don't think it's worthy to read. I am going to talk a little bit about how free speech is vital for Christianity. A brother, James Bales, who wrote Communism, Its Faith and Fallacies, I recommend that read even though it's dated. It gets to the mind and thinking of people who want control. Let me tell you something. Yes, you think Hitler killed a lot of people? Go study Mao Zedong. Go study what Stalin did. Interestingly enough, about the situation with Mao, the Maoists in China, the sparrows migrated from other countries, therefore they were not Chinese. Oh, look at Maslow in the background stretching out there. What are you doing, boy? Yeah. Anyway, sorry, I got squirrel. I got distracted. The birds weren't Chinese, so they decided to kill all the birds. Well, what do you think happened? I tell you what. How many died? How many died in Maoist China? Mao's policy were responsible for a mass number of deaths, with estimates ranging from 40 to 80 million due to starvation, persecution, prison labor, and mass executions. And his government has been described as totalitarian. Well, it was anyway. So what they did is they said, well, the birds aren't communist. Communism is what we are. Communists are what we are. Communism is the way to go. These birds aren't communist, so we're going to kill all these birds. Well, guess what happened when you killed all the sparrows? When you had a national effort, a concerted effort to kill all the sparrows, there were droves of bugs, locusts, and such, and they ate all the crops, and it caused the famines. And then, of course, people died in by the millions. And then, how many died under Stalin? American historian William D. Rubenstein concluded that even under most conservative estimates, Stalin was responsible for the deaths of at least 7 million people, or about 4.2% of the United Soviet Socialist Republic's total population. Now, do you think that's a conservative number? I think it is. I bet it's more. So with Mao Zedong, you have 40 to 80 million. That's communism. With Stalin, you have conservatively 7 million. How much more? And then, of course, you have the Jews, 6 million. That's what I've always heard. That's what I've always read ever since I was a little bitty boy. Well, you understand that America is a pretty good experiment. And quite frankly, I don't care who it makes mad. America is a better culture than all of the other cultures. And the way you know that is how much people are willing to sacrifice just to come here and start at the bottom of the ladder. I mean, you got people risking death to come here. You've got women and children allowing themselves to be raped. I guess I should say graped. YouTube's really been after me lately. But why? Why do they want to come to the United States of America so bad? Folks, let me tell you something. With what the left is doing to Donald Trump, with what these idiots on the left and the right have done with this bill, if they keep going, we're going to be, and this sounds crazy, Tony, you got a conspiracy, you got a tinfoil hat on, you're just a conspiracy theorist. I'm telling you, this is, you've seen the escalation line. Where's the off ramp? Where's it stop? If it don't stop, it's going to keep going. And there's no stopping it. So what's the end? Killing all of the sparrows because they're not good communists. Killing all of the sparrows because they're gendered and they don't practice DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. All right. It's amazing how easy it is to manipulate people to go along with and believe someone like Mao or Stalin. It really is. Yes. And incidentally, a lot of people were hollering about, well, you can't say anything about free speech if you're for the banning of TikTok. First off, it's a sin to bear false witness. TikTok is not banned in the United States. In fact, even if TikTok decides not to divest itself from its Chinese ownership, you can still get TikTok. Now, you won't be able to get it. It'll be very difficult for you to get it on your Apple device, but you'll be able to get it on your Android because you'll just be able to go download it off the internet. It's not going to be banned. It's just not going to be in the App Store. I mean, what's the, come on, people. Anyway, Jake Vaughn, currently working, but will listen later on Apple Podcasts. Thank you very much. Incidentally, I was very, very surprised. I don't ever look at analytics. And I was very, very surprised about the analytics on Apple Podcast from the Cogitations podcast channel, which is where this airs. It's amazing. Thank you so much for that. Incidentally, if you don't know, I upload all of this audio on Apple Podcast, Spotify, TuneIn Radio, Podbean. Actually, I upload it to Podbean, and Podbean puts it to a bunch of different places, and you can listen to it just about anywhere. All right, let me run through this really quickly. I want to stop at the. I want to do this in 6 minutes, and I want to take 2 minutes to close this out. All right, here's why the First Amendment in the United States is very important, particularly the free speech. Scripture emphasizes the necessity of proclaiming the gospel. Mark 16:15, go ye into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. The gospel is offensive to people who are outside of it. So without freedom of speech, we wouldn't be able to take, it would be very, very difficult for us to preach the gospel. How many people, like again, without the freedom of speech that we have in the United States of America, you would be at the whims of the civil government. Now, it's not too bad in Canada right now. However, if the wrong person comes up on, when the wrong person comes up on, if the wrong person comes into the assembly, sorry, I saw a comment that I wanted to get to. If the wrong person comes into the assembly, when I'm preaching about how to live soberly, righteously, godly, and how to leave ungodliness and worldly lust, they can go back to the wrong people and tell them what I said, and the government could cause problems for us. Like, we do have to be careful. But think about that. If we didn't have free speech, the gospel would be less free to travel, and we would preach the gospel at our own peril. And I don't know about you, I rather like the civil rest. I like the peacefulness. Historically, many Christian reformers relied on the freedom of speech to challenge prevailing religious and societal norm. Do you understand? And this is not a popular view, but without the Constitution of the United States and the freedom of speech that it enshrined and protected, we may have never gotten rid of slavery. I don't know. I think it would have eventually fizzled out, but women received the right to vote, slaves were freed, all kinds of societal wrongs have been rectified because of the First Amendment. Even when you had people systemically working against oppressed people, trying to stop their speech, they were able to speak because you couldn't just stop them outright. There may be a better way, but nobody thought of it. And so they did the way that worked. The First Amendment ensures that not only can individuals practice their religion freely, but they can also debate and discuss the tenets of their faith openly. This is vital for the growth of religious understanding and for the defense of the doctrinal truths. So talk to somebody about China. I'm pointing over here. I don't know where evidently China's somewhere behind me. Anyway, talk to somebody that's been a missionary in China. And when you're on the subway in China, I wonder if you can pull out your Bible and read it. Maybe Google that. Maybe Google nations where the Bible is banned. I'm afraid we better get ready to preach and teach jail, prison, Brett. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we need to get ready to preach and teach from jail or prison. Deborah O'Neill, so read the book or find it on YouTube, How to Kill 11 Million People. It's by Andy Andrews. I will definitely look at that. All right. So now this is going to sound weird. As a Christian, I don't think we ought to live in a pluralistic society. I think as a Christian, everybody ought to be Christians. But I'm not God and I'm not in charge. God gave us the ability to act in our own interest, in our own self-interest. And you have the right given to you by God, quite frankly, to be wrong. Now, you're going to, as long as you're willing to accept the consequences, you got to mitigate that. But free speech acts as a safeguard. Excuse me, wrong one. Encouraging a pluralistic society. Listen to this. A society that upholds free speech is better equipped to foster a pluralistic and tolerant environment where multiple faiths can coexist peacefully. For Christianity, this means being able to share the faith while also respecting and understanding others. Now, I'm not God and I'm not in charge. If I were, the whole nation, we would be under a theocracy. But I'm not in charge. Aren't you glad? Because of the freedom of speech, the Muslims can come in and the Christians and the Muslims can reason together and they can hash out a way where, look, Christianity and Islam is not compatible. But if y'all stay over there and we'll stay over here and we won't harm one another, we won't bother one another. That's freedom of speech. And without the First Amendment, we can't have that type of relationship. So what do you have without the First Amendment, folks? You get an apartheid state. You get one demographic rising to power to the oppression of all others. Freedom of speech. The First Amendment keeps that from happening. We would still be speaking the King's English if preachers hadn't spoken out in the 1700s. Hey, hey, Alabama. I with no mitigation whatsoever, co-signed that comment. Power is the ultimate aphrodisiac, from Jason Goldtrap, quoting Henry Kissinger. Now, freedom of speech is a defense against persecution. If you don't have freedom of speech and you're persecuted, you don't even have the right to say you're persecuted. Because remember, when it comes to the anti-Semitic deal, that bill, if it passes into law, if a Jewish person actually harms you, well, what if it rises to power and on behalf of a Jewish organization, a Jewish individual harms you, you are not even allowed to speak out against that because that's anti-Semitic. Free speech acts as a safeguard against the persecution of religious groups. When Christians can speak openly about experiences and beliefs, they can better protect their rights and respond to injustices. And finally, contribution to moral and ethical discussions. Christianity has a role in shaping moral and ethical standards in society. Free speech allows Christians to contribute to important discussions on moral and societal issues, influencing laws and policies in line with Christian values. Where would we be on Roe versus Wade if the First Amendment were taken out of the way? Folks, let me tell you something. Freedom of speech is it is of paramount importance. We have to protect it at all costs. And quite frankly, the Second Amendment is there in case they infringe upon the First Amendment. Because if you aren't allowed to talk, now you've got to act. Folks, please call your congressman and get this thing squashed. It does not need to go one step further. I hope that my rantings and ravings have not been too off-putting today. I hope that you will consider supporting the podcast brand, Cogitations. Well, actually, it's Christianity Now. But you can send any dollar amount you want to www.nearchurches@gmail.com. It's on the bottom of your screen there. You can also check out the merch store and buy stuff from the merch store. Also, you can do Patreon for $1 a month. www.patreon.com/Christianity Now. Folks, please, once I get this uploaded in podcast form, if you would share the podcast. You can share the video. Do every just share it however you feel like you need to share it. I guess I shouldn't be picky. I should just be thankful you share it. But anyway, that's all I've got here, folks. This has been Tony Brewer with Cogitations. Pray for our nation. Pray for these poor people that are led astray. Pray for these people that are trying to be the voice of reason. Pray for the unrest between Palestine and Israel. And preach the word. Be instant in season and out of season. Reprove, rebuke, and exhort with all long suffering and doctrine. And that's all we can do. We just trust in God. God will listen. It seems volatile in the moment, but on a long enough timeline, the average is always rest and peace. So I know that's hard to see when you're in it, but it will get better. We need to act. We need to be involved. We need to be activists. And we need to lay siege to the throne of heaven. God bless every one of you. This has been Tony Brewer with Cogitations. Like, subscribe, share on YouTube, all that good stuff. Support me if you can. Go to Substack for a free subscription and all the good articles. Listen to Christianity Now narrations, where we narrate all of our articles, and I'm going to shut her down. God bless every one of you, and we'll catch you on the flip.